What's happening, everyone? TomGorian here, and the 2025 Australian Grand Prix is officially in the books. Wet weather madness. That's what this race was pretty much labelled as from as soon as FP1 finished. Heavy rain for the race, and this was a typical wet race as far as just the rain, the intensity of the rain, and then there were dry spells, and there were just... It was a very confusing race for the drivers, a very difficult race for the drivers as far as how many drivers actually DNF'd. I think there were 6 drivers who DNF'd. Was it 4? I think 5 or 4 of the rookies DNF'd as well. Liam Lawson DNF'd, Bortoletto DNF'd, Isaac Hadjar, he DNF'd as well. And this was a very tough race for the drivers to try and not only just make it to the end, but just keep it on the track as well. We saw a lot of excursions, a lot of drivers going off the circuit. This is the instant reaction, and yeah, this was a crazy race for all of the weather reasons. McLaren have confirmed their pace. They led 1-2 for most of the race. However, it was the weather that caught them out in the end. Lando Norris wins over Max Verstappen in second place, and it's clear that McLaren have I would say a big advantage when it comes to outright speed, not just in qualifying but also in the race as well. There was one point in the race where I think Lando Norris was like at least 18 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, and just the McLarens, they seem to be the quickest car by a country mile. And if Mercedes and Ferrari, if they don't sort it out soon, then McLaren are going to run away with this constructors title before it's even begun, simply because Red Bull, you know, they only have Max, and clearly Red Bull, the car is not the same compared to what it was last year. And even though Max is working wonders, Liam Lawson had a disastrous showing in his first race in Melbourne, Australia. Kimi Antonelli is my driver of the day personally. I think he did a tremendous job. After the floor damage he suffered in qualifying, he finishes in 4th place on the road, but he had a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release, so he finishes in P5. The Williams of Albon and Carlos Sainz as well. Carlos Sainz was one of the DNFs, unfortunately, which is bad for my fantasy team. However, Alex Albon really put in a good shift today. Very underrated performance. 4th place after the penalties were said and done. So yeah, Williams, they seem to be like the biggest winners out of the winter. They've definitely made a lot of strides, especially against Alpine and Haas and Aston Martin. And Williams now back to where they were back in 2014, in my opinion, as far as the 4th best team. Ferrari, once again, shockingly bad in this race from all areas, from just the drivability, the stability of the car, and just the strategy. Once again, let them down. There was a point in the race where it was, where it was dry, and then the rain really started to pick up. If Ferrari would have instantly reacted to both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton and maybe followed, I'd say, Max in, or maybe, went a little bit different, maybe one lap early, then maybe we could be living in a world where Hamilton and Leclerc are 1 and 2, but they finished in P8 and P10 in today's race. Unfortunately for Oscar Piastri, he was running second and he was wanting to challenge Lando Norris for the race win. However, McLaren ordered team orders to pretty much force Oscar behind Lando, and then I think it was like lap 28 or something, there was a heavy intense rainstorm and both McLarens went off in the final sector. I think it was like 10, 12 and 13. Oscar Piastri was stuck in the grass. He had to reverse to get out. However, when the time he got out, he was dead last and a lap down. He did a nice recovery to finish in P9, but he could have gotten a lot more today. However, George Russell finishes in P3, a very quiet performance from the Mercedes. Didn't really see much of Russell. He was hanging in there for the first 5-6 laps, and then eventually the pace really slowed down for Mercedes. But yeah, instant race reactions aside, Gasly, I do feel like Pierre Gasly got shafted today. At one point in time he was P8. He could have scored a couple of points. He was ahead of both Ferraris, but he went off, went slightly wide on the exit turn 1 and lost positions to both Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and also a couple laps later Oscar Piastri. He finishes in P11. And yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, I honestly thought the RBs would have had a good race today. They did have a good race in the first half, but it was really in the second half again. They were another team that the weather just simply affected. But a very difficult race for the drivers to not only control their cars, but also to read the weather. A lot of race-changing conditions as well. And yeah, just absolute carnage for the first race of the season. So we start. Isaac Hadjar crashing out on the formation lap. That brought out that was an aborted start. We had an aborted start in the race, and we had one more formation lap, so that's why there were 57 laps instead of 58. Max overtakes Piastri on the exit turn 2, and on the end of the first lap, Sainz and Jack Doohan officially become the first 2 DNFs of, well, in the race, that is. Sainz and Doohan become the first official DNFs of the Australian Grand Prix. Safety car comes out last 6 laps, and then the safety car gets restarted. Very difficult conditions as far as, you know, the weather and how damp it was. And then officially on lap 12, the track was dry enough that the FAA enabled DRS. One thing I want to talk about as far as Lewis Hamilton is concerned, I think he definitely needs some time with his engineer, because there's definitely some miscommunication as far as him and Ricky, which is Carlos and Seb's old race engineer at Ferrari. It feels like Ricky was giving him too much information, and Hamilton wasn't either used to it or he didn't want to, you know, hear that amount of information he was receiving, to the point where Hamilton was telling Ricky, you know, just leave me to it, leave me alone, you know, don't give me this much information. But I think as time goes by, I think Hamilton's relationship with his engineer will eventually improve, and they'll meet in the middle as far as, you know, what Hamilton wants as far as his engineer and his information is concerned. Lap 16, Antonelli starts to make progress. He overtook, I think, Nico Hulkenberg for P12, but then a couple laps later he span and lost that position. Lap 18, Verstappen makes a mistake. He locks up his front left on the exit or the entry in towards turn 10, and it's officially a McLaren 1-2. Nothing really happens for the next 12 laps. However, Piastri slowly but surely starts to claw back the time to his teammate Lando Norris, and we're thinking here that it might be a McLaren 1-2, and Oscar might be taking the lead of this race. He has DRS, however McLaren give him the official order to back off and just preserve this 1-2, and Oscar, you know, obliges. Lap 34, Fernando Alonso, a driver we didn't really see much of, he crashes on the entry of turn 8, just loses the back end and shunts the rear right, bring out the safety car. Lap 35, everyone boxes for dries. Both McLarens box for hards. Max boxes for mediums. So we were thinking, okay, if, you know, they're clearly not going to go on strategy, so Max might have the advantage now, but maybe McLarens might be coming back towards the end of the race. Haas tried something different. They tried to go back on the inters on lap 38, however they realised that it wasn't the right call, and on lap 40 they boxed for the medium tyres once again. Lap 41 and lap 42 safety car ends and the safety car restart. Lap 43 DRS is enabled, and now we enter the class 3 stage, the short intense weather stage as far as the rain, and this is where all hell breaks loose as far as the chaos is concerned. Lap 44, a 5-second time penalty for Gabriel Bortoleto for, I believe, was an unsafe release for Liam Lawson. The rain starts to intensify on the end of lap 44. On the end of lap 44, in towards the penultimate corner, this is where both McLarens, they went off. Oscar Piastri spins in the final corner, gets stuck in the grass, and he goes down into last place. Norris, Russell, and Albon box for inters, and officially Piastri becomes a lap down. Verstappen stays out a couple laps on lap 46, and then lap 47, he also boxes for the intermediate tyres. However, Lando is clearly ahead of Verstappen. And then lap 47, we get our second safety car as Liam Lawson crashes on the exit of turn 2, and Gabriel Bortoleto crashes on the end of turn 13. Very disappointing for Liam Lawson. I think Red Bull did expect a lot from him. I think Red Bull expected Kimi's race to be Liam's race. However, a very disastrous weekend for Red Bull as far as Liam Lawson's side, and I believe that the pressure is only going to get worse from here, to the point where if he gets 2 or 3 more DNFs, then Red Bull might give him the sack and send him down back to RB and maybe promote Yuki Tsunoda for the second half of the season. They just can't really find, I'd say, a driver who is more comfortable, and I'd say yeah, I'd say who's been more comfortable than Daniel Ricciardo ever since Daniel decided to leave Red Bull back in 2018. So then at the end of lap 47, the safety car comes out. Lap 48, Ferrari box for Inters. However, they did fumble the strategy. They stayed out too long, to the point where literally Lando caught them, and by the time they boxed, they fell in towards P9 and P10. Lap 51, safety car ends, and then lap 52, Leclerc overtakes Lewis Hamilton for P9. There was a bit of contact there on Hamilton's front left and also Leclerc's rear right. No damage to both cars. Lap 54, Gasly. This is where Gasly makes the mistake. He's in P8. He makes the mistake of going slightly wide on the exit of 1, and he loses both positions to Leclerc and also Lewis Hamilton on the entry in towards turn 3. And then the next lap, Piastri officially overtakes Gasly, and Gasly is no longer in the points. It's a bit of a shame, to be honest. I think Gasly had a decent race today. He deserved to score points. However, in the final couple of laps, Verstappen really closed in on Lando Norris to the point where on lap 56, he has DRS and he's averaging 6 or 7 attempts to the point where he could actually maybe overtake him if he actually sent it, but it's damp conditions, and I don't think Max really wanted to risk it since this is the first race. Lap 57, Antonelli overtakes Albon for P4, but he gets awarded a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release. And then lap 57, Piastri overtakes Lewis Hamilton for P9, and Lando Norris wins the Australian Grand Prix, his 5th victory of the season, and I believe he took pole position, fast lap, and the race win, so the triple crown of a Grand Prix weekend. Final results, Lando Norris wins ahead of Max Verstappen, George Russell in P3. Alex Albon gives Williams their best result in, I want to say, 9 years. He finishes in P4, a great day for Williams as well. They're truly back as far as the best of the rest. Very pleased for Alex Albon. Kimi Antonelli had a strong performance from P12. Was it P18, I think. He comes home in 5th place, 15 seconds behind the race leader. Lance Stroll, again, probably the dark horse of this race. He finishes in P6. Quiet race for Lance Stroll. I don't think he really did anything, but he just stayed out of trouble, and he got awarded a P6. Nico Hülkenberg in the Kick Sauber P7, a very unlikely result for Kick Sauber considering I don't think they scored a point last season, but Hülkenberg finishes ahead of both Ferraris. Leclerc in P8 with Piastri in P9. I think he wanted more points, and then Hamilton rounds out the top 10, his first point as a Ferrari driver. Gasly, Tsunoda, Ocon and Behrman finishes 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th respectively. Not really a good race as far as Haas is concerned. I definitely believe that they were wanting more in the race, but they just couldn't really do it. And Ollie Behrman, a disastrous weekend, both crashes in free practice and also as well just nowhere in the race. Liam Lawson, Bortoletto, Alonso, Sainz, Doohan and Isaac Hadjar or the official did not finish and did not start. A very chaotic race, and pretty much Drivers' Championship is the race order. And then in the teams, McLaren 27 points, 2 points ahead of Mercedes, and then Red Bull have 18. Williams are in 12th. Williams are in 4th with 12. Aston Martin with 8. Kick Sauber with 6, and then Ferrari with 5. So that is that for the 2025 instant reaction for the Australian Grand Prix. Very chaotic race in the weather, a very enjoyable race. A little bit boring in the first half, but in the second half it really starts to pick up. Next week we go to Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix, and who knows, it might be raining again, but we do know that hopefully Red Bull and Mercedes do answer McLaren. So thank you for watching. What was your favourite moment of the Australian Grand Prix? Leave your thoughts on the race down below, and I'll see you in the next video in a bit.